Under a sky the color of champagne and winter roses, the city of Los Angeles shimmered with anticipation. The Forrester mansion, draped in ivory silk and flickering candlelight, stood like a cathedral of beauty and deceit. It was supposed to be a day of redemption, a celebration of love restored after years of heartbreak. Hope Logan, radiant and calm on the surface, was marrying Liam Spencer again, a union that symbolized renewal not only for them but for the entire Logan Forrester dynasty. The world, or at least their glittering corner of it, wanted to believe in the illusion of perfection. But beneath the perfection of white roses and designer gowns, something dangerous was stirring, something that had been waiting too long to reveal itself. Deacon Sharp adjusted his tie at the back of the room, his heart twisting with pride and unease. His daughter looked ethereal, the very embodiment of purity, but he knew too well that purity was a myth in this town. Love, in their world, always came at a cost. He smiled for her, but inside he wrestled with guilt. He had made one request to Hope, a simple one, that Sheila Carter be allowed to attend. He had promised Sheila that this wedding would be a bridge, a chance for peace, for acceptance, for something resembling forgiveness. But the answer had been swift and merciless. Brooke had refused. Ridge had refused. Even Hope, gentle and forgiving as she was, had said no. "Sheila at my wedding?" she had whispered to her father. "Dad, it would destroy everything." And so, Sheila was uninvited. The ghost at the feast, the wound no one wanted to look at. For days she had pretended to accept it, pretending to find comfort in Deacon's reassurances. But those close to her saw the storm building behind her eyes. When she disappeared the night before the ceremony, no one thought much of it. They assumed anger, or pride, or perhaps a heartbreak too heavy to carry. What they did not realize was that she had left to uncover something so catastrophic that even she hesitated before using it. By midday, the mansion was a symphony of elegance. Guests mingled beneath chandeliers, the air filled with laughter, perfume, and the soft strains of violin. Brooke Logan moved through the room like a queen, composed, dazzling, victorious. The past months had been cruel to her family, but today was proof that she had prevailed once again. Hope had chosen forgiveness, Liam had chosen stability, and the Logans and Forresters had chosen to forget. Brooke caught her reflection in the mirror and almost believed it herself. Liam stood at the altar, every inch the dutiful groom, his nerves hidden beneath polished charm. He glanced toward the crowd, at the familiar faces, Ridge, Steffi, Finn, Taylor, all there, each carrying their own complicated history. It was strange, he thought, how easily people pretended that the past didn't exist, that they hadn't all sinned in some way. But that was what the Forresters did best. They wove morality into couture, stitched forgiveness into silk, and paraded their scandals as lessons learned. When Hope appeared, time seemed to still. She moved down the aisle in lace and light, her expression serene, her every step measured. Liam's heart tightened with something between love and fear. The music swelled, cameras flashed, and for a brief, fragile moment, it seemed as though peace had been achieved. Brooke dabbed at her eyes, Ridge placed a hand on her shoulder, and the guests leaned forward, eager to witness another chapter in the ongoing saga of the families who ruled their world. And then the doors opened. The sound of it, sharp, echoing, cut through the air like thunder. All heads turned. Sheila Carter stood framed in the doorway, dressed not in chaos, but in quiet power. Gone was the wildness, the frenzy that had once defined her. She wore black, her posture unbroken, her gaze cold and certain. A hush fell over the room, a collective intake of breath, as she stepped forward. Deacon froze, his heart dropping into his stomach. Brooke's hand clenched the edge of the table. "Sheila," Ridge said in a low voice, half warning, half disbelief. "You can't be here." "Oh, but I can," she replied, her voice steady and hauntingly calm. "Because what I have to say doesn't just belong to me. It belongs to all of you." The air shifted. Hope's veil fluttered slightly in the stillness. Liam reached for her hand. But she didn't move. Something in Sheila's tone, the strange control of it, held everyone in suspended terror. "I wasn't invited," Sheila continued, walking slowly toward the altar. "That's fine. I've spent most of my life outside your little circle of perfection. But today isn't about me. It's about truth. And I can't stand here and watch you promise honesty and devotion when every person in this room has built their life on a lie." "Get her out of here," Brooke snapped, her voice trembling. But no one moved. Not even Ridge. There was something magnetic, dreadful, in the way Sheila's words landed, like a confession and a curse all at once. She turned her eyes to Brooke first, and the years of resentment hardened her tone. "You, Brooke Logan Forrester, the eternal victim. You've spent decades preaching forgiveness while using every ounce of your influence to bury your own sins. Tell me, does it feel holy to sit there knowing what you helped cover up?" Brooke froze. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I think you do," Sheila said softly, pulling a small envelope from her clutch. "This is a copy of a statement, sealed, hidden, paid for in silence, about a young woman named Luna Nozawa." A gasp rippled through the room. The name hung heavy, like the scent of something burning. "You all remember Luna, don't you?" Sheila's voice sharpened. "The troubled girl who escaped justice, who mysteriously disappeared before the truth could destroy your precious family name. Well, it seems she didn't just escape, she was helped. Documents falsified. Records erased. And guess whose signature appears on the paperwork?" The envelope fluttered to the ground like a guillotine blade. The projector of every camera caught the name before anyone could hide it. Brooke Logan Forrester. The silence that followed was unbearable. Brooke's face went white. Ridge stared at her, disbelief written across every line of his face. Hope, trembling, looked from her mother to Sheila, her entire world tilting on its axis. "Mom," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Is that true?" Brooke's lips parted, but no sound came. "She did it for love," Sheila continued mercilessly. "She did it to protect Ridge, to protect the Forresters from scandal. Because if Luna had faced trial, certain truths about the family would have come out. About Ridge's financial influence. About Taylor's involvement in Luna's therapy. About the entire rotten web of privilege and lies you've spun to make yourselves look noble." Ridge rose from his chair, fury and humiliation colliding in his chest. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're twisting facts as always." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about," Sheila replied, her gaze unwavering. "You paid for Luna's silence. You sent her away. You made sure her death meant something convenient instead of something honest. And now you're here, all of you, pretending this day is about love and family. But it's not. It's about control. It's always been about control." The room erupted into chaos. Guests whispered, gasped, some even stood to leave. Hope's bouquet slipped from her hands. Liam turned toward Deacon, demanding an explanation he didn't have. And through it all, Sheila remained eerily calm, her voice cutting through the storm like ice. "You didn't just lie to the world," she said. "You lied to yourselves. And now your children are inheriting those lies. Hope, you think this marriage will save you? That it'll make you clean again after everything with Thomas, with your mother, with your father? Liam, you think standing here makes you the good guy? You've built your morality on sand. And you," she turned to Ridge, "you're the architect of it all. Every betrayal in this family traces back to you." Her words landed like strikes of lightning. Brooke finally stood, trembling, tears cutting through her makeup. "You came here to destroy us," she said. "You couldn't stand being left out, so you brought poison to a wedding." "No," Sheila said quietly. "I came here to give you the gift of truth. Whether it destroys you or saves you, that's up to you." With that, she dropped a flash drive onto the floor, a tiny object containing a decade of buried evidence, and turned to leave. No one stopped her. Outside, the sky had begun to darken, the clouds bruised with coming rain. Sheila walked down the marble steps alone, her heels clicking against stone, her expression unreadable. Behind her, the sounds of shouting filled the mansion. Brooke's sobs, Ridge's rage, Hope's broken cry as the fairy tale she'd rebuilt crumbled once more. Deacon followed her out moments later, his voice hoarse. "Sheila, what have you done?" "What I had to," she said simply, not looking back. "You all wanted peace. But peace built on lies is just another war waiting to happen." By the time the first drops of rain fell, she was gone. Inside, the once perfect wedding dissolved into pandemonium. The floral arch that had framed the altar now looked grotesque, a symbol of everything false. Hope stood in her gown, motionless, the lace clinging to her as though the fabric itself mourned. Liam tried to reach for her, but she pulled away. "How do we move forward," she whispered, "when everything we are is built on deceit?" Ridge sank into a chair, his face pale. Taylor tried to steady him, but he pushed her hand away. Brooke knelt beside him, begging him to believe she had done it only to protect them all. "I did it for our family," she cried. "I did it because I thought it was right." He looked at her then, really looked, and something in his eyes changed. "That's the problem, Logan," he said quietly. "You always think you're right, even when you're destroying everything." And in that moment, surrounded by flowers and broken vows, the Forrester, Logan empire trembled. The wedding that was supposed to heal old wounds had instead ripped them open, exposing every sin, every compromise, every moral fracture hidden beneath years of elegance and wealth. Outside, the storm broke over Los Angeles, thunder rolling through the hills like divine judgment. And as the rain fell against the mansion's glass walls, washing away the remnants of perfection, one truth became undeniable. This family had not been undone by infidelity, but by the unbearable weight of its own hypocrisy. In the distance, somewhere in the city, Sheila Carter lit a single candle in the darkness and smiled to herself. She hadn't crashed a wedding, she had performed a reckoning. And the reckoning was far from over. The November light over Los Angeles was soft and deceivingly serene, its golden haze pouring through the waves of the Pacific like melted glass. Yet beneath that stillness, the world of the bold and the beautiful was far from peaceful. The city's glamour had been bruised by loss, betrayal, and the lingering echoes of tragedy. And as Thanksgiving Day dawned, each family, fractured, mended, or pretending to be whole, gathered to find meaning in the wreckage of their own choices. At Steffy Forrester's oceanfront home, the sea air carried both salt and silence. It was here that the Forrester family tried once again to recreate what they had lost, a sense of belonging, of love strong enough to survive everything. The house was filled with the warm scent of roasted herbs and wine, the crackle of firewood, the laughter of children, yet there was something unspoken in every glance. Steffy moved gracefully between the kitchen and dining room, her presence poised but fragile. For the first time in months, her family was together. Ridge, Taylor, Finn, and the children, Kelly and Hayes. From the outside, it was the picture of harmony. But within that harmony lay an ache too deep to name. It had been a brutal month. Luna's death had left the city gasping, not only because of the loss itself, but because of what she had become in her final days, a symbol of everything dark and broken that Los Angeles tried to hide. Her miscarriage had devastated those who loved her, and her violent end had reopened wounds thought long healed. The revelation that Luna had survived her supposed escape, only to die later, had shattered what little piece Steffy and Finn had managed to rebuild. Finn, once the heart of compassion and steadiness, had become a man haunted by his failures, as a doctor, as a father, as a husband. The daughter he had loved, the child he had tried to save, had turned against him, and now her death lingered over their home like a curse. Steffy tried to breathe life back into the room. Her voice was gentle as she reminded everyone that Thanksgiving was a day for gratitude, not grief. "We're still here," she said softly, placing her hand on Finn's arm. "We still have each other." Her words were meant to soothe, but Finn's silence was heavy. His smile never quite reached his eyes. He had not yet forgiven himself for the choices that had led them here, Nor could he forget the look in Luna's eyes the last time he saw her, a mixture of fear, confusion, and something close to hatred. Taylor watched her son-in-law quietly, the way a psychologist watches a patient unraveling behind polite smiles. She had returned to Los Angeles recently, drawn by Steffi's pain and by something else, something less professional, something personal. Ridge's presence at this gathering had complicated everything. Their bond, once tender and cautious, had deepened again in recent weeks. It was not passion that brought them together now, but understanding, the kind that only grows out of decades of mistakes, forgiveness, and the knowledge that love sometimes survives where trust does not. Ridge sat at the head of the table, trying to look like the anchor his family needed him to be. To everyone around him, he was the proud patriarch, the man who had rebuilt his family after chaos. But inside, he was splintered. Brooke was not here. She had chosen to spend Thanksgiving with Donna and Katie, insisting she wanted Ridge to have time with his children. But they both knew the truth. This distance was not generosity. It was exhaustion. Brooke had grown tired of watching him drift toward Taylor every time life grew hard. And Ridge, though he would never admit it aloud, had grown addicted to the safety of Taylor's presence, the way she steadied him when the world threatened to fall apart. The conversation at the table was light at first. Kelly made everyone laugh with her stories from school. Hayes, too young to understand loss, babbled happily as Finn lifted him onto his lap. But the laughter felt rehearsed, the kind of joy performed for survival. When the moment came for each of them to share what they were thankful for, a hush fell over the room. Steffi spoke first, her voice trembling as she looked at her family. "I'm thankful for my children," she said. "For the chance to rebuild something stronger, even when it feels impossible. And for the people who keep believing in love, even when love keeps breaking us." Taylor followed, her words gentler but no less weighted. "I'm thankful for second chances," she said, glancing at Ridge, "and for the strength that comes from loss. We can't erase what's behind us, but we can decide what we carry forward." Ridge cleared his throat, his gaze lingering on Taylor a moment too long. "I'm thankful for family," he said finally. "For forgiveness. For the people who remind me what really matters." But as he spoke, the image of Brooke alone in their empty house flashed through his mind, and guilt tightened his chest. He raised his glass anyway. Across town, at Il Giardino, another Thanksgiving table gleamed under candlelight, one that was as uneasy as it was intimate. Deacon Sharp had insisted on hosting dinner for the few people in his life who hadn't completely turned away from him. Sheila Carter sat across from him, wearing an expression of forced composure, her eyes darting toward the window as if she expected the ghost of her granddaughter to walk in. Carter Walton, ever the reluctant peacemaker, had agreed to come only because Daphne Rose had convinced him that even dysfunctional families deserved grace on holidays. The meal began in silence. Deacon's attempts at small talk fell flat. Sheila's voice, when she finally spoke, was brittle. "I'm thankful," she said, her tone almost mocking, "that I'm still here. That after everything, after Luna, after the lies, after the hatred, I'm still breathing." Her laugh was short and hollow. "Though some people might wish I wasn't." Daphne reached across the table, her hand tentative on Sheila's. "You've been through a lot," she said kindly. "But you don't have to carry it alone." Sheila's eyes softened for a moment, then hardened again when she saw Deacon watching her. "Don't pity me," she said sharply. "I don't need forgiveness. I just need the truth." The truth was that Deacon had been keeping one. His connection to Taylor, the therapy sessions that had crossed into intimacy, the nights when grief turned to longing, had become his new secret sin. He had told himself that it was harmless, that he and Taylor understood each other as broken souls trying to heal. But now, sitting across from his wife, he felt the weight of betrayal pressing against his chest like a confession waiting to burst. Carter tried to ease the tension. "We've all made mistakes," he said gently. "Thanksgiving is about remembering what we still have, not what we've lost." But Sheila wasn't listening. Her eyes were fixed on Deacon, sharp and knowing. "You're awfully quiet tonight," she said slowly. "Usually you can't stop talking about how grateful you are. Tell us, Deacon, what are you thankful for this year?" The room froze. Deacon swallowed hard. "For redemption," he said finally. "For the people who see the good in me when I can't see it myself." Sheila smiled, but her eyes glinted with something dangerous. "And who might that be?" It was a small question, but it landed like an accusation. Deacon hesitated, and that hesitation said everything. Carter glanced at Daphne nervously. The air seemed to thicken as Sheila's smile faded, replaced by a cold, eerie calm. Back at Steffi's, the Forrester dinner continued, but even the warmth of family couldn't mask the fractures beneath. After the meal, Ridge found Taylor on the porch, the ocean wind tangling her hair. She looked peaceful, but there was a question in her eyes, one she had asked him 1,000 times without words. "Why do you keep coming back?" "I thought it would feel different," Ridge said softly. "Being here with everyone. But it doesn't. It feels like I'm chasing ghosts." Taylor turned toward him, her expression both tender and sad. "Maybe the ghosts aren't the problem," she said. "Maybe it's the living you can't face." He wanted to argue, to deny the truth in her words, but he couldn't. He looked out at the sea, its endless motion reflecting the restlessness inside him. "I don't know who I am anymore," he confessed. Taylor smiled faintly. "You've always known who you are, Ridge. You just don't like what it costs." At that same moment, miles away, Deacon and Sheila's fragile peace shattered. The truth about Luna's death, about the lies, the secrets, the betrayals, erupted into accusations and tears. Sheila's grief turned into rage, Deacon's guilt into panic. Carter stood between them, trying to prevent the explosion he knew was inevitable, while Daphne wept quietly at the table. By the time midnight came, both dinners had dissolved into reflection. The Forresters stood together under the stars, each lost in thought, Ridge battling guilt, Steffi clutching Finn's hand as though holding him could keep him from fading, Taylor silently wishing for peace that would never come. At Il Giardino, the lights had dimmed, and Sheila sat alone after everyone left, her glass untouched, her mind already spinning with the beginnings of another plan. Thanksgiving in Los Angeles had ended the way it always did, not with closure, but with the illusion of calm before the next catastrophe. The city slept beneath its velvet sky, but in the hearts of its most beautiful, the storm was only beginning. Ridge would go home to Brooke, carrying the weight of another silent betrayal. Steffi would wake from dreams of Luna's voice calling her name. Deacon would find himself torn between the woman he feared and the woman he desired. And Sheila, the eternal survivor, would light a candle for Luna, whisper a prayer that sounded more like a promise of revenge, and smile into the darkness. For in this world of the bold and the beautiful, love was never pure, peace never lasted, and gratitude always came with a price. Thanksgiving had merely reminded them of the truth they could never escape, that beneath every act of grace, there lived the unrelenting hunger of the human heart, to possess, to forgive, to destroy, and to begin again.